whatever vacation a number of Green Bay Packer players took over their bye, I don't want to take because apparently you come back hurt. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Delray. What the freak is this injury list? Like, as I was alluding to, the Packers have a longer injury list coming out of their bye than when they went into their bye. The bye week is supposed to be a week off where you heal up, get some time away. If you're a player or a coach, go see your kids, that kind of thing. Like, get away from the 24-hour-a-day life that is your job. But you're not supposed to get hurt doing it. Good Lord. I'm just going to rattle off this injury report. We've got a whole bunch of guys who are, well, one doubtful and then a bunch questionable. Let's just get to it. Doubtful is Devondre Campbell. Now, that one's not surprising, right? Still dealing with his ankle injury. Hasn't really practiced this week. Did do a little bit today, though. So still doubtful for the game. And then questionable. Listen to this list. It's just preposterous. Aaron Jones, Jerry Alexander, Elton Jenkins, Quay Walker, Darnell Savage, Devontae Wyatt, Zane Anderson, Yosh Nijman, and Eric Stokes. Now, Stokes not yet on the 53, so, you know, they still got to switch that around, although chances are looking good for him. But goodness gracious, Aaron Jones, Jair, Elton Jenkins, Quay, Darnell, and they're all like starters, too. The vast majority of them are guys who are going to play a ton. So Aaron Jones, when Matt LaFleur was asked, apparently he's been looking good. Right? He's been moving around as though all systems are go at practice, although he's still practicing in a limited capacity, right? Jair Alexander, though, Jair, who started out the week not on the injury report, suddenly was on the injury report yesterday, and now seemingly is getting worse because he was limited yesterday. Today, being Friday, he did not practice today. Matt LaFleur, when asked about it at his press conference, expressed concern. Let's say that. He kept his notes very, very brief on Jair, but yeah, there's some consternation, as Matt LaFleur said. When it comes to Elton Jenkins, who he didn't practice today either. Those are the only two guys that full-fledged didn't do practice. Well, when it came to Elton, it sounds like it's much more precautionary, that this was a intended move by the Packers to give him the day off. But nonetheless, Quay Walker, Darnell, Devontae Wyatt, Zane Anderson, Yosh, Stokes. And if Jair can't go, of course, the importance of Stokes actually being able to come back is that much more important to their chances when covering Sutton and Judy and even Marvin Mims, who I'm going to talk about later on in this show. But the reality is, when Eric Stokes does come back, in what capacity is Stokes coming back? Is he going to be as athletic as he was before? Is he as fast right now as he was? Because that's what so much of his game was predicated on when he was such a good rookie at man coverage. And then, yes, he did take a step back as a sophomore, although I don't believe it's nearly as large of the step back as others would have you believe. Stokes coming back will be a large boon for this defense, but that's only if he comes back fully. And like we know, but I don't know if he can do that coming back from the injury that he has. So now the Broncos, who aren't coming off of a bye, they have a much shorter injury list. Isn't this nice? Now, I don't have their formal questionables, doubtfuls, anything like that, because at least at time of recording, they hadn't released theirs. But there are two players, two notables for the Broncos, who I did pick up on their practice trends, kind of looked at some Denver insider stuff, tried to get a gauge of where they are at. And one is tight end Greg Dulcich. It doesn't look like he's going to play at all. And the other would be safety Justin Simmons. Now, Simmons did get in some limited practices. Looks like he's going to be getting a questionable tag, and from everything I garnered, looks like they're expecting him to play, which, as probably their second best player in their secondary, that's a big deal for Denver. So let's take a look at Denver. Who is Green Bay's next opponent on Sunday for the 3:25 Central Time kickoff? Well, for one, these Denver Broncos, they are 1-5. How did they get there? Their lone win came against the Bears, which I think many teams can say at this point. They've had losses to the Raiders, Commanders, Dolphins, Jets, and Chiefs. 4 of their 5 losses have been under 11-point differentials. So yeah, I mean, look at that. The Broncos may not be as bad as some people are trying to get you to perceive right now. Because in reality, yes, they got massacred by the Dolphins, but their other losses haven't been that far apart. Is it a good team? No, but it's a team that can hang tough? Yes. Sean Payton is in their first year as the head coach. Sean Payton, otherwise known as Mike McCarthy with better marketing. Their offensive coordinator is Joe Lombardi, defensive coordinator Vance Joseph, and of special note to Packer fans, they have an assistant special team coach by the name of Chris Banjo. Yes, that Chris Banjo, who used to be a special teams ace in Green Bay. Taking a look at how this year's Broncos are different than last year's Broncos, well, they lost some talent. They did lose Draymond Jones, who's an interior defensive lineman. They also lost Dalton Risner and Billy Turner, more so depth offensive line pieces. But they added Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers to take up those two spots on the line. They added Zach Allen to fill in for Draymond Jones. And then they also added Perrine, the running back, who's part of a three-headed monster that's quickly evolving in Denver at the running back position. The draft gave them two notable players. One is wide receiver Marvin Mims, who's become their big play specialist, and the other would be Drew Sanders, who's appeared in a number of games thus far for them and has had, frankly, mixed results in his play. No other rookies to this point have received substantial playing time. Offensively, let's take a look at the Broncos and where they stand. In terms of passing yards per game, they get an even 200 yards passing per game. That's 20th in the NFL. Rushing per game, they get 106 yards rushing per game, 19th in the NFL. Scoring 21.5 points per game, that's 17th in the NFL. Of note, what's really interesting here about the Denver Bronco offense is it's not exactly a fast-moving offense. They are dead last in plays per game at 55.5 plays. If you're curious where Green Bay is on that stat, Green Bay, also not a fast-moving offense, sitting in 29th at 57.6. This could be a game with not many plays played. Now, I did rattle off that they were 19th in rushing, and yet they're 29th in rushing attempts. They're 20th in passing, 27th in passing attempts. Means that their offense is predominantly performing on a per snap basis. Anytime you see a big jump like that they're ranked significantly higher in their yardage than their snaps, it means that they're actually relatively effective at moving the ball. And it's something to really consider here. They also are slightly better offense at home than they are on the road. And of course, this game being played in Denver. Defensively, this is where it gets exciting for Green Bay. Passing yards per game, they give up 268 passing yards per game. That's 30th in the NFL. Rushing yards per game, 172.3. Dead last in the NFL. Scoring, they give up 33.3 points per game. Again, dead last in the NFL. Now, earlier this season, they did play Miami. They gave up 70 points per game, or 70 points to the Dolphins. Not per game. They only did it once, but they gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins. And that, of course, skews some of these numbers, especially that scoring one. In terms of sacks and turnovers, they're just a touch worse than Green Bay. They get a little over 2 sacks per game, and they have an average turnover margin of negative 0.8. Penalties, they're slightly better than Green Bay. They average 6.7 per game, while Green Bay averages 6.8. So in these departments, these are relatively similar teams. Of note, though, while only getting a couple sacks a game, they are giving up more than 3 a game. You can bet Rashawn Gary's taking note. In terms of special teams, where they're rated per PFF, they are 13th in the NFL, drastically above Green Bay. So everyone knows, right? This defense, historically bad. It's trending in some really negative areas. And I'm going to get to some stats soon that really reveal it. But the Denver Broncos do some things well. Okay, they're a bad football team. They're a really bad football team. But Russell Wilson's numbers actually appear better in a box score than when you're watching the game, because the narrative around Russell Wilson is the man is completely cooked. Don't let him cook. He be cooked, right? This isn't dangerous anymore. Now he's just bad and washed and old. But the truth of it is, currently in this season, he's sitting at 65% completion rate with 12 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. That's nothing to sneeze at. His average depth of target is 8.1, which is the higher side of the NFL. And as a team, they actually have some really, really nice deep play statistics. On throws over 20 yards, Wilson is 10 of 24 for 374 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the thing about where all those yardage and completions are is it's not heavily skewed to one side of the field. Sometimes you see that with quarterbacks where like their deep ball is fantastic to the right and not so good to the left. His is pretty evenly spread across the field. Now, the player who is seemingly making a lot of those plays would be Marvin Mims, the rookie. He's got an average catch of 24.6 yards per catch. If he's on the field, he is their big play guy. But Green Bay's defense is built to stop the deep ball, so still something to be cognizant of. And I will say, too, like I said, Russell Wilson is having all this statistical success, right? It hasn't stopped any of the whispers about Russell Wilson being traded this offseason, about the Broncos being in on one of the top tier rookie quarterbacks next year. So I'm telling you, like his stats don't look bad, but when you watch them, it's bad. So hey, it's just a rough go right now for the Broncos. The other thing that they actually do fairly well is they do run the ball. Sure, they're only 19th in the league in total average per game for rushing yards, but one player that's really served as a nice spark plug for them has been UDFA Jaleel McLaughlin. He's a tiny little scat back, 5'9", 107 pounds. So it's not like he's playing every snap for him. And he actually just started to play a little bit more over the last two games, getting over 20 snaps per game over the last two. But he's making those snaps count. On the season, he has 29 rushing attempts for 189 yards. That's a 6.5 average. And the thing that perhaps is most enlightening there is per carry, he's getting 4.34 yards after contact. He also can catch the ball with 9 catches for 58 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's a breakaway threat, but at the same time, he is so fast, so effective at gaining yards that he could be the catalyst to Denver developing a death by 1,000 paper cuts offense that does work against Green Bay. Green Bay's great downfall, as we all know, in the Joe Barry defense is little piddly plays with 20 play drives that just take forever. Denver likes to take forever. We'll see if they actually can put together a smaller condensed offense or if they're going to stay in their big play format, which is just fine with Green Bay. Now, what are they bad at? A lot. According to DVOA, they are the second worst defense of all time through 6 weeks. The only one worse than them is a mid-1990s Bengals defense. And do you remember anything about the 90s Bengals? Woof. And their offense happens to be trending in a backwards direction. They now rank 17th in the NFL in DVOA, but they're trending back as a lot of that big play success actually happened earlier in the season. By the way, interesting little tidbit. If you think that the Packers fandom is toxic right now or everyone's overly negative, go check out some Bronco stuff. Go to their websites. Because I'll tell you, like, even some of the writers for the Broncos, like on some of the blogs, holy buckets, it's gotten toxic and angry over there in Denver. So how do the Packers win this game, right? It's a game that they should win. It's a game they are going against an inferior opponent. But the thing is, Denver may not be as bad as all of those stats reveal. That Miami game really skewed some stuff. And last week, they actually held relatively tight against Kansas City, only losing by 11. Granted, the Chiefs did look like a dumpster fire in part of that game, but still, got to give credit where it's due because you got to wonder how much was because of that, because of the Broncos. And supposedly, the Broncos are doing the same thing on defense that many want the Packers to do on offense. They've simplified. Vance Joseph has simplified the defense. They're just waiting to see if it's going to work or not. It seemed to work okay against Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. So what are the keys to victory for Green Bay? 1, utilize your players how they actually should be utilized. For some reason, this has been a problem for Matt LaFleur and company this year. Look, Patrick Surtain is going to shut down whatever wide receiver he's going against. And it may not always be Watson, may not always be Dobbs. Maybe he's going to move around. But no matter what, wherever he is, that's going to be on lockdown. Okay? That's not Denver's problem in defensively. Their problem is in the middle of the field where Luke Musgrave should put up some stats this week. I am so tired of seeing Luke Musgrave get 3-yard pitches or quick little outs or him being the check down, getting the ball after 2-3 yards and then not being able to break a tackle. It's not his game. There's other tight ends who can do that kind of thing. You drafted Luke Musgrave to be baby Travis Kelce. Kelce last week, I know they're not the same thing. Don't riddle the comments with that. But Kelce last week put up over 120 yards receiving against Denver. He was why they had so much success. Denver can't cover the middle of the field. And that's where Luke Musgrave should be feasting if he's used like a baby Travis Kelce, which is exactly what you drafted him to be. So let him be that. Stop with the chip block. Stop pretending that Luke Musgrave can help block Max Crosby, or in this case, any one of Denver's edge rushers. And let Musgrave go be Musgrave. At the same time, let's look at the quarterback. At this point in his career, Jordan Love is a mobile rhythm quarterback. So let's get him in motion. Let's get him moving. Do some more rollouts. Do some more bootlegs. The Broncos have some decent edge rushers in Benito and Cooper. They each have multiple sacks this season. So don't allow them to get after Jordan by doing these deep developing, deep pocket type plays. Get Jordan moving and let your athletic offensive line, which is supposed to be like the hallmark of this line, that they can move, that they're athletic, let them move and get everyone moving. The other thing, too, why I'm supporting some of this quicker, short stuff is the Denver Broncos straight up can't tackle. They're not a good tackling team outside of 3 of them. In fact, if you go on PFF right now, there are 3 defenders that have a missed tackle rate under 10%. Every single other defender for the Denver Broncos is over 10%, including Mathis, one of their starting corners. He has a 26% missed tackle rate. That means that over 1 in 4 attempts of tackling is just straight up missed. Or even Singletary, one of their inside linebackers. Inside linebacker is supposed to be like the best tackling position on your team, right? He's got a missed tackle rate of 17%. Those are guys who are playing every single snap and they can't tackle. So get the ball into receivers who are going against them. Roll out, get the ball out, and get guys moving. Aaron Jones is going to be huge in this regard if he can actually play. Number 2, don't get beat by their stars. Similarly to the Raiders, the Broncos are a very top-heavy team. I'm convinced Russ Wilson can still do some damage against you if you give him all the time in the world. Jeudy and Sutton, they're no jokes at wide receiver. Maybe perhaps a little overrated in NFL circles, especially Jeudy per their production, but still, nonetheless, they're no joke of some wide receivers. Defensively, they've got Zach Allen on the interior, who's got multiple sacks this year. Jewell at inside linebacker, Surtain, Simmons in the secondary. So this is a team that's very, very top-heavy. But the pieces around them, or their pieces protecting them in the case of the offense, not so good. They have an even thinner depth chart than Green Bay does. And we all know that that's one of the knocks on Green Bay this year, is being loaded at certain positions and really rough at other ones. So the Broncos can be exploited if you're targeting the spots away from their stars, very similarly to going against Vegas last week. Number 3. This one's very short. I'm just hoping for the best. Joe Barry needs to be Joey Badass. The last time the Packers went up against Russell Wilson, he was handed his first career shutout. And yes, Joe Barry was the defensive coordinator of that game in 2021. Barry knows Wilson very well from when Wilson was the quarterback in Seattle. All the years that Joe Barry was an assistant for the Rams, he was going against Wilson twice a year. He needs to be able to call the game that he knows in a way that Wilson can't do anything against. And then number 4, don't take this game for granted. The Broncos are bad. There's no denying it. Historically bad in some ways. But they are coming off a game where they only lost to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs by 11. And the Chiefs, as I mentioned earlier, they did play bad. But the Broncos are, in some ways, at least defensively, starting to look a little bit better. Historically, the Green Bay Packers are also terrible, not only when traveling west, but specifically when traveling to Denver. It's a thing in the Matt LaFleur era. Okay, and I know a lot of you out there are very angry at Matt LaFleur right now. And while I don't completely share that sentiment, if you've been around, like even last year, if you were on this podcast, you know that I took Matt LaFleur to task a lot for where's the fire? Where's the passion? Or just why are we constantly playing to our opponent? Why, when we go against inferior teams, are they still close games? Why can we not blow out inferior teams? That was the theme of last year. They're still doing it this year. They're playing right at their competition's level. And realistically, Denver and Green Bay do line up in a number of different ways, statistically speaking. Still, you cannot play to your opponent here. You're coming out of the bye. This team needs to be fired up. Rasul Douglas the other day mentioned that he's sick of coming to work sad. that everyone around him is sad all the time because things aren't working. Stop being sad, get pissed instead. Get angry and make the Broncos, for once, because they can be bullied. For once, come out angry. Be the bully. Take the Broncos seriously, punch them in the mouth, and then actually live by the adage of all gas, no brake, and actually get yourselves a win against an inferior opponent. I know it's easier said than done, but if this team comes out in Denver, traveling west off of the bye, and looks lackluster, looks lazy, looks like they don't give a crap, then the rebuild is on, folks. And I don't mean that in the way of like, let's trade everybody, fire sale it all. I just mean the culture needs some fixing. This game may not be as easy as many people think, especially given the fact that now it's the laundry list of injuries. But it's still a game that they should win. So Packers 26, Broncos 20. Join me on Sunday for the watch party, 3:25 Central kickoff. I'll be here for Packers versus Broncos for the entire duration of the game. So if you're looking for someone to join the game with, because I do believe no Packer fan should ever have to watch the game alone if they don't want to. So we've got a really cool small community that sits here through every single game. Come join us. I promise you won't regret it. Thanks so much for checking out Lombardi Time Brews. I will see you on Sunday. And as always, go Pack Go.